Konnichiwa, everyone. Today's guest is Jamie Woolford, guitarist and lead vocalist for the Minneapolis, Minnesota rock band, The Stereo. Jamie and I take a deep dive into the writing, recording, and inspiration behind their fan-favorite single, New Tokyo is Calling, taken from their 2001 album, No Traffic. I was surprised to hear that this particular version of the song was completely re-recorded, save for the vocals. Jamie explained the arduous process that went into transferring his vocal tracks from the first version to this one, before everything could be easily moved around with computers. He also discussed how the lyrics were autobiographical, and the story behind them super cool. Totally unexpected and abstract in a way that makes me like the song even more. I mentioned to Jamie that I felt The Stereo was about 5 years ahead of their time, influencing a whole generation of bands who came after them. And I'm excited to announce that the band is back together with a new album and a whole bunch of other great stuff in the works. For all this and a whole lot more, don't touch that dial.
Hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast.
All right, Jamie, what's happening?
Oh, not much, Chris. I'm so happy to be on your show. Like, I love your show. I've listened to many episodes, and I'm just honored to be a part of this. This is fantastic.
Well, before we started rolling, we were going through all this technical stuff. Jamie was starting to check his microphone and stuff, and finally he just stopped and said, "Wait a second. Hey, how are you guys doing? Good to see you." And I appreciate that you did that because it's been a minute.
It has been a hot minute. Yes, it has.
For those that don't know, gosh, I've known Jamie forever. Did Animal Chin, your first band, ever play with Less Than Jake? I want to say you guys broke up before we had a chance to play together.
No, we did. We played.
Was it Madison, Wisconsin?
Yeah, that was our first show with you at the that weird cafe that you used to have to drive up onto the sidewalk to load.
I can see it now.
You can smell it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Brad from Rhetoric Records had promoted that show, if I remember correctly.
We actually used to play there kind of frequently, but it was like in the middle of this little strip mall-y kind of thing on campus. It was like it felt like it was a triangle.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And
I just can't remember the name of it. But yeah, that was our first time playing with you guys. I think that was the first time we met you guys and the whole thing. And then I know we played several shows with Less Than Jake. We did Slims in San Francisco. Primarily our tour time together was with The Stereo. But Hamilton did play several scattered shows across the states with you guys at different times.
Sure. And I've talked to you about Animal Chin. I know that was, one of your first bands, and it probably pained you to go back and listen to those recordings because they were done on a shoestring budget. But the energy coming out of those recordings, you guys were a great band.
Thank you.
The system failed to see the importance to the importance of it. Took me by surprise, no thanks to you, no thanks to them. Hope you realize it's not this way, it's not this time. No one last time, and now you're mine. They cannot comprehend what you did to me. And all the kids are gone.
People still talk about that band. I'll be out on the road and people still bring you guys up.
Hey, you know what? If you're lucky enough to be able to just play music, right, that's its own reward. If you're then lucky enough to play music that people enjoy, that's yet another tier of reward. And then if you're able to do something that touches people in a way that they remember it years later, that's it. Pack it up. You did it.
Yeah.
You added to the continuum of music. I'll say it this way. I'm honored to have been a contributor to the sort of the lineage of rock and roll music that has given me so much in my life. Mm-hmm. I've been touched by music all throughout my life, and there have been songs that on certain days seem like they save your life, and if I can give anything like that back to someone else, it's a win-win. It feels just as good to me as it does hopefully for them as well.
It's funny. As a fan, you can relate to this. You go back and listen to any of those early punk records that we grew up with. We don't hear the sloppiness and the bad production and the mistakes. All we hear is the memories when we listen to that. And that's when someone comes up to me with their first Less Than Jake record. This record changed my life. I'm like, oh, it's a bad demo, but I'll sign your record cover.
Sure,
You're elated. You're elated, and you're in the moment for the reasons you just stated.
I'm sure you would say something similar to this, right? But when we were making those records, we didn't know we were doing it weird or wrong, or even if we were wandering into some sort of greatness, a moment of greatness. We were just trying to piece together an idea that we had and a song that at the time seemed pretty cool to us, just kids kind of just figuring it out, right? Like if you listen to the beginning of Nervous Breakdown by Black Flag, right? There's definitely a disconnect between the guitar and when the drums kick in, and then it settles after like a measure or something of that drum march. But I don't give a damn. Right. I don't care that it's not perfect. I'm just like, where's my fucking skateboard? Let's do this. You know what I mean? Like, and it takes me right back to being like in like 7th grade and in the Minnesota winters, pulling my parents' cars out of the garage so that I could like skateboard in the garage in like December when it was like freezing, 18 inches of snow outside. Space heaters to try to dry the wet spots left from melting snow in the garage, and building a crappy little like a quarter pipe in there and just wrecking the garage with me and my friends on skateboards, blasting Black Flag out of a boombox. I mean, that to me is kind of what I'm talking about. Like I got so much out of that band, right? Back then in 7th grade, and to go on and add to that continuum is like the best thing you could ever do with your life.
My brain just decided, I think, to start working. Was it called the Mango Lounge?
Oh yeah, dude, Mango something.
Mango Cafe?
Yeah, it's something like that. Mango Central. I don't know. It's
right.
Mango something. Wow. I would have never have come to that. And so thank you.
Jamie, I am full of useless knowledge, my friend.
Yeah,
and the only time it's ever come of any use is this podcast. So I'm now thankful for it. But
you're finally redirecting your skill sets right to the right. No, just kidding.
I'm trying my hardest, and I was thinking from that initial time with Animal Chin, the next thing I know, it was literally, I want to say it was John Janik and Vinny talking about, hey, Rory from the Impossibles, who we were huge fans of, loved that band, did a ton of shows with them. Mm-hmm. Rory and Jamie have formed a project called The Stereo. Mm-hmm. This was around 1999. And now you guys got signed to Fuel by Ramen, but 1999 Fuel by Ramen wasn't what they became.
Yeah, no, it was just another indie, underground sort of punk rock record label, that kind of like served the punk rock, punk ska, a little bit of like electronic stuff at the time, or at least it started to get turned that way, but just basically cool indie underground bands that all had sort of like an affinity for that style of music and that culture. And yeah, it's kind of a right place, right time situation, because I didn't know any of you guys, but we knew Skink and Pickle, or we knew Mike Park, and that's how I got sort of introduced into the FBR world, which was, we gave Mike a cassette of some Animal Chin demos, and he passed on it because he gave it to Vinny, but Vinny was like, this is great, like, and gave it to John, figure out who these people are and call them and let's do a deal with them because I really like this. So, and that was the introduction. It's funny, like the term Fueled by Ramen, it must have been sort of like a colloquialism of your guys' camp or something like that, because for like the first like 4 or 5 conversations that I ever had with John, he kept saying, "Hey, Fueled by Ramen Records," and I didn't actually know what he was saying. Like I kept going, but I was like, and I was a kid, so I was kind of like going, "Oh, is a record label guy contacting me?" And I didn't want to keep asking him. I think I did ask him like 3 times, like, what is it called? And he would slow it down, but I still didn't understand because we're just on a phone call, right? And so I just stopped. I stopped asking. And then I would go back to the band, and the band was like, "Oh, so, what's the label called again?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what it's called. But we're going to do this deal with them.
I don't know. I got to level with you. I got to level with you. It might be the worst name ever for a record label. That's not as huge as they got.
It's not great.
it bore out of our diet. We were basically eating ramen, and we started Fueled by Ramen out of our apartment. You know, it was we were fueled by 10-cent noodle packs because that was all we could afford to eat. But you know, I think that's why it's been abbreviated to FBR. People say over the years, it's a little rolls off the tongue a little bit better. But you know, your debut record 300 came out that summer of '99, and you know, instantly it was just a classic. It sounded really good, and I'm sure '99 that record wasn't done to Pro Tools. I'm sure it was 300 done analog.
So it was actually recorded to ADAT. Do you remember that format?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we recorded on
digital
ADAT.
Tape.
Yep. It was actually digital videotape. It was called Super Video. This was technically the format, but then we bounced it all over to analog tape for the mix. So it did hit some tape at the end there. And I think that was just a method that our mix guy, Jay Robbins, you know, he was like, I'm going to, you know, fire it off the tape. I don't even know if that the studio that he worked at had ADAT. So I think he actually had to do a transfer at some point before I showed up at the studio. So, and
for our listeners, Jay Robbins is from Jawbox, a highly influential band to me, and I know Jamie. The New Tokyo is Calling EP came out in July of 2000, and something I didn't know, you know, I knew it was on No Traffic, but I just figured it was the same version. Now the EP was produced by Jay, but on the version that ended up on No Traffic that we're going to talk about today, just the vocal track was kept for that, but you re-recorded everything. And how did that come about?
I'm sure you know this, obviously. Like whenever you go to make a proper album, more often than not, you do some sort of demo form of it, right? There's some sort of informal recording made in advance of the recording, and it's got a couple of attributes of that process is that it sort of weeds out what does and doesn't work. It gives, you know, you can kind of test out your ideas, whatnot. Is this tempo good? Is this tempo bad? Is this key too high for me to sing it, et cetera, right? Which back in those days, there was no key that I thought was too high for me.
Well, considering you were singing in a register only dogs could hear it sometimes.
Right. Yeah, that's the reason the stereo didn't catch on with, you know, outside of the canine population. No, but so we made a demo for New Tokyo, and then we went to do the EP with Jay, and we recorded that again. But I did record actually all my own vocals back at our home studio, actually at Jeremy's house in Milwaukee. And I really got to the point where that song was like, I don't want to record this a third time. And when we were going to do the song for No Traffic, the plan was just to re-record it again and just do it in yet even better form for our album. And then the EP would just have this different version. But I sort of made the decision to not sing it again. And I got this harebrained idea. It's sort of like an experiment. Like, well, if I can do this, I can pull this off, then I won't have to sing it again. But if this doesn't work, then I'll just have to sing it again. But in the day and age of Pro Tools now, you can fly vocals around extraordinarily easy. I mean, you could use the same chorus for the last chorus. You can put vocals from one song and another song and change keys with, you know, do whatever you can pretty much imagine. Like it's all modular. But when you're dealing with a linear based recording medium like tape, and then you're switching them. So like the No Traffic sessions were actually recorded on analog tape, and the vocals from the form of New Tokyo was recorded on the ADATs again. So I had this, I needed to figure out a way to record the vocals onto the tape that we just made for No Traffic. And obviously you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, that's kind of weird. You could, you know, so you basically just sync them up, right? And if it's the same tempo, you hit record and you just play it over as long as it's lined up, right? Well, there's drift. There's, you know, the tempo, the metronome that we used on the EP it might have been like 128 or whatever, and 128 on the tape as well. But there's just drift. It doesn't work, right? You go like a line.
And are the machines calibrated correctly too?
Exactly. And no is probably the answer, right? So what I did, I came up with this extraordinarily hokey way of doing it, where I essentially told the tape machine that the singer that you're recording is actually this other tape machine, and I would record it in line by line, but I would digitally offset there was a way to sync it, and I digitally offset it inside the ADAT, so I'd be like, okay, I need to move now the vocals another 22 frames to the left so that it gets locked back into the beat. And I essentially just went through and like sort of like a comp, you know, you do nowadays, and I just basically recorded in the lines one at a time, sometimes breaking up words because the ending sustain of the note or whatever, the envelope would end in a weird spot that I wouldn't sing it that way. So I would have to actually punch in the middle of the word and do some really strange things. But I went through line by line and just recorded one tape machine to another until it sounded perfectly in sync. And then I go back and listen to the song, and anything that bothered me, I would go back and I had all these notes of like, just like they were in time indexes. And I go, okay, let me shift that another like 15 frames and it took hours. It actually probably took about 10 hours longer than it would have had I just re-sang it.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Right.
And for the listeners, Jamie, what he just laid out is a colossal pain in the rear end. Okay, this is a nightmare. There is something special about the vocals as well as the harmonies on this track. Is that why you kept it to preserve that? Because otherwise you just would have sang it.
I would have just sang it again. Obviously we sang the song every night for years, but there was something about the take that I did. I really pushed my voice. I was kind of drifting away from that style of singing after I left Animal Chin. Animal Chin, I was sort of balls to the wall. I didn't really know how to sing, and so I would just sing in a way that was reminiscent of what you would sing like when you're in a club with like terrible monitors, right? You're almost kind of relying on the back wall to bounce your voice back to you just to get any sort of like feedback of, that what you're doing and you're doing it well. And so inevitably you just end up like singing as loud as you can just to try to drive the PA so people can hear you, so you can hear yourself. And I sang like that all throughout Animal Chin and all on the records. When I got to the stereo, I tried to pull back a little bit because I obviously realized as you do this more and more, you get better at your crafting. I don't have to like sing with the gas pedal all the way down all the time,
Yeah.
So, but on that song, I kind of did. And I was like, okay, kind of, this is, I think, the energy that this song requires. So to do it again and then maybe fall short, or not even fall short, but just have a lateral move didn't seem like like something I was going to be happy with. So I sort of committed to just figuring out a way to get these vocals on that recording. Other than talking about it to you this many years later, nobody really noticed. So,
well, my next question is, I'm assuming you wanted to include it on No Traffic because you saw what a standout it was live. You saw the reaction from the fans. And was Fueled by Ramen behind that decision to re-release it again?
I don't think there was any, I can't recall any sort of like initiative by the label to be like, that's the song, this is whatever. I mean, it was all very diplomatic and democratic, I suppose, back in those days, where my tenure there, they never felt like there was like the label suits and then the band, which would be sort of indicative of a scenario that you might expect from like a major label, or at least what people think like dealing with a major label is like.
Well, in all fairness, it hadn't got to that point yet. I mean, you guys
we're just kids.
Disbanded. You guys disbanded the first time in 2004, so you were a band for about 5 years, and that was kind of before Fall Out Boy and Gym Class Heroes and Paramore had hit. It was before. So I want to jump into the track now, and
sure.
I'm not just saying this. I've known you for going on 30 years, bud. I'm just throwing this out there. This is one of the most perfect little pop songs. It's just there's no filler in it, and I don't know. Have you ever thought about lending this to another band to record? I think this song's amazing.
You mean like almost like give it away to somebody to cover or something?
Yeah,
I mean, people are welcome to cover it. I guess I'm not holding it in some sort of like penalty box or anything like that.
Sure.
Sure.
I know it's probably kind of a weird question. I've never asked anybody that on the show, or I probably never even asked any of my other musician friends, but I just feel this is a song that deserves to be heard.
Thank you, Chris. For a variety of reasons, thank you, because we've known each other so long, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your life and experience and your knowledge about music and this, that, and the other, but also just for the straight up compliment of it. You never know what these things that you create in your head are going to do for people. You kind of know what they do for you in the moment, and then you hope that when you share it, it makes some sort of connection. But it's always just so nice to hear other people take a look at what you do and then go, this is good. And it means a lot to me. So I'm just tickled. Thank you.
Last thing I'll say, we're going to jump into the song. I feel that your band was 5 years ahead of its time. You guys you really had something special, and I feel that you were just ahead of a lot of the stuff that came out right after you that was influenced by your band. New Tokyo is Calling is 2 minutes and 46 seconds long. Starts out with like a kick drum and a guitar slide. Drums, bass, and stereo guitars are in off the top. Tambourines in there doing 16th notes. And this goes on for 8 measures. It's the chorus progression. Before the band stops, we get into verse 1. Jamie by himself says, "Don't run away." The band comes in. The lyric is, "So inclined to take the easy way. Don't cause a scene. Don't decide you are through. You're not so tough. Things are rough. Find a better way. Something gets a hold of me when my head gets inside of you." And on that line, "my head gets inside of you," the drums, bass, and guitars ring out before chorus 1. So set these lyrics up for us.
Like what does it all mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued. New Tokyo is Calling. How was it about Tokyo? I don't even know. Had you ever even been to Japan by that point yet?
No, I hadn't. And in fact, like it was set up at that point. Like or at least we had signed, or I got a phone call. I'm assuming it was from John Janik, and talking about doing a licensing deal in Japan with JVC Victor, which is a big label in Japan. Essentially, it acts like kind of like a major or whatever. So they're going to re-release our album over there in Japan, and that we would eventually come over to support whatever new record we were doing. At that time, it would have been No Traffic. So I got off the phone, and going overseas was definitely sort of like a lifelong dream of mine to have my music like get me on a plane and take me to a strange land, right? And I'm sure anybody that has done this job, right, we'll call it a job for a minute, has had the experience of, I can't believe that my songs are like, giving me a free vacation with my friends, right? So I got off the phone with John, and I essentially wrote the whole music thing in about 30 minutes, just with this feeling of just bliss of, I got this great opportunity coming my way. And I just worked it all out. I worked the melody out in the sort of the Marble Mush, baby gibberish vocals, that whole mess that we do when we write songs. Yeah. And I probably had "Don't Run Away." I probably had "Call You," and then maybe the "you" at the end of the chorus kind of thing. But everything else was sort of just like nebulous and just phonetics at that point. The lyrics came about probably several weeks later. We actually started playing the song before I had lyrics, like at shows. Again, going back to the whole, the PAs of most of the clubs that were playing back then, when your band's on stage with Marshall stacks and, loud drums and all that stuff, a lot of times your vocals are almost just sort of like, you can kind of hear grunting, coming out of the if you're lucky. So I was like, do we really need to have lyrics tonight for this? They're not done. Does it matter? Okay, let's just sing it anyway. So
of course, this is pre-YouTube too, so it didn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Nobody would know. The moment is gone in 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Right. But to answer your question, the lyrics to me it's a little bit of a schizophrenic release of some of the tensions that had been sort of surrounding me and the band at that time. "Don't Run Away, So Inclined to Take the Easy Way" is sort of like a statement at me, from me, right? Don't run away from this. Don't go the easy way. Don't cause a scene. Is me telling me basically don't get uppity with all the punk rock naysayers around you. Don't decide you're through. Don't give up, right? This is a pep talk to myself in some respects.
Wow.
You're not so tough. Things are rough. Find a better way. Something gets a hold of me when my head gets inside of you is it kind of what we were talking about in the beginning of this podcast. Like, there's something magical about the idea of me making something that means something to someone else, right? Something gets inside of me when my head gets inside of you. That's what that lyric means to me. and then, call you. This is for, well, I'll stop there because it sounds like you're going to dissect it even further.
Well,
so.
we are, but I'm kind of intrigued right now where you're going with this. I had no idea. You could have told me, oh, this was about a girl. I met her online. We were writing, pen pal letters back and forth from Tokyo. Right. I had no idea where you were going with this, and it's really cool. And some of the things that you just touched on about, the punk rock thing, early on. This is probably no secret to you. I had heard Jamie from the Stereo is difficult to work with.
Yeah.
And I said, after meeting you, and
I am.
After meeting,
I am extraordinarily difficult to work with.
After meeting you and knowing you, what a sweet person you are, I would always just say, a couple times that came up. Oh, somebody that's passionate about his music and is driven and knows exactly what he wants. Cool. I'm the same way. So
right.
I get it.
Well, I appreciate the the lifelong sort of like cheerleading that you've always given me. I appreciate that, and let me know if the checks need to to compensate for inflation.
No, but I mean it. Like how many times have you heard someone's difficult? And typically what that means is they're passionate about their art and what they're creating.
And ultimately, that's what I was trying to do. I never back then especially there was a level of ambition that I was, using to drive my band with that was probably unhealthy. It was unhealthy. It just was like, I think I sort of like fell into this idea that unless it was difficult, unless it was, a arduous thing, we weren't trying hard enough at it. And I just had these bizarre standards in my head where I'm just like, people that made it in the music business didn't do it because they were lazy, right? They didn't do it because they just, and oddly enough, now I'm old enough to understand, well, some people were just extraordinarily lucky, but other people were just extraordinarily talented, right?
Sure.
And I didn't think of myself as lucky or talented. I was like, I'll just replace that with effort, right? And I think that can kind of wind people up in a bad way. And yeah, I got the reputation for being difficult, but it wasn't because I was trying to be a dick. It was because I was trying to be great. I wanted to be as great as the people that I loved. I wanted to be the descendants of pop rock, radio, 80s ripoff punk.
Well, it was also easy to defend you because I wasn't in a band with you. So
yeah, you and I had no sort of creative butting heads, right?
You try being in a band with Roger, or you try being in a band with me. We're not the easiest people either.
I would imagine that you would exhibit those things, and especially if you have an idea you're passionate about. I just my limited sort of creative involvement that I've had with you and Roger over the years. You guys know what you're doing. You guys have an idea.
Yeah.
And you hear something in your head and you want it to come to fruition. And why say no to that? Why tell you no? Figure out that thing. It's either going to work or it doesn't, right? And the problem is that back then, right, when we're all kids doing this, like there's the what do you know kid vibe that happens even similarly aged people. Like why should we listen to you? What makes you so special to know this, that, or the other, right? And the answer is, well, nothing really, but like this is I have the idea at the moment. Let's try it, and some people go to work with the I'm cashing my check mentality, and other people go like I want to make something great, and until you can surround yourself with people that want to make themselves want to make something great with you, there's going to be acrimony.
Youth reaching out the dummy road. Keep reaching, yeah, keep reaching. The suits keep telling lies.
Hey everybody, don't go anywhere. We got lots more with Jamie Woolford after a few words from our sponsors. Do you like to laugh, geek out on music, and learn all about that band or artist who had that one song back in the day, but then seemed to fall off the face of the earth? If so, you need to subscribe to One Hit Thunder. Together with an array of interesting and hilarious guests, we do a weekly dive into one-hit wonders like Eiffel 65's Blue, Krayshawn's Gucci Gucci, EMF's Unbelievable, Delamitri's Roll to Me, Los Del Rio's Macarena, Musical Youth's Pass the Dutchie, and even Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind. So are you subscribed to One Hit Thunder or what? As Desiree would say, you gotta be. And as K7 would encourage, you gotta come baby come and join in on the fun of the One Hit Thunder podcast.
Come baby, come baby, baby, come, come. Come baby, come baby, baby, come. All hail the kings of no hope. Down the stairs we roll. And on a sinking ship.
And now, back to the show.
Well, I think the only song on this show that got to the chorus quicker at 23 seconds was What's My Age Again when I had Mark Hoppus on. But 29 seconds, we're in the first chorus of New Tokyo's Calling.
Call you, this is for you. I will see you from a new view. New Tokyo is calling you.
Call you, this is for you. I will see you from a new view. New Tokyo is calling you. And there's harmonies on the line, call you at the top. I will see you from a new view. And the very last you in the last line, there's harmonies there. Did the song, and I went and looked for it, Jamie, I could only find the No Traffic version. The Jay Robbins produced version, was the arrangement any different from what we're hearing here? Did he have any suggestions with the arrangement, or was this kind of, when you tracked the demo, was that how the song went?
I kind of think the latter is true. I mean, the only real difference that I can remember is that the beginning of the song where, it says, don't run away. On the No Traffic version, we stop. In the live version, we stop. In fact,
yes.
Live, we actually don't even sing it. We just let the crowd usually just does that. And thank you, because it's I need that moment just to catch my breath usually. So thanks, guys. But on the EP version, we actually sort of play a play through. We sort of play the riff like we would continuously throughout the rest of the verse. That happens already.
But for the most part, arrangement wise,
yeah, I don't think there's anything different. We do the whole pre-verb thing in the bridge, with the reverse drums, the Bon Jovi, pre-verb. So
we'll get there.
We're gonna get there.
So, what are you saying here in the chorus lyrically?
I think I'm just talking about my life, my world. I will see you from a new view. I think there is something extraordinarily important about travel. You know this, right? Like, until you sit in a van or sit on a plane and arrive at a destination that takes 8 hours or 12 hours or 24 hours to get to, a person doesn't have a really great grasp of how big the world is, right? And how different people are at different points upon that earth. And there's something very, very sort of like emotionally and existentially maybe important about that moment, traveling so far and taking so long to do it, and then getting there and then having an experience with different people so that your worldview changes. Your worldview is updated and enlightened, right? And I will see you from a new view. That line is again, sort of directed back at me, like, I'm going to have a different understanding of life once I travel, 11 hours on a plane to the other side of the world in a different time zone. And I play my song again for a completely different group of people than I ever have before. There's like, I think people that kind of live in they grow up in a town, and then their adult life is spent living in that town. I feel they're missing out on something. There's a level of understanding that's not attained about people, until you go meet people from further away than, your town.
I completely agree and can relate with that.
Yeah.
Everything you just said, the in-betweens, the airports, the trains, the hotels, the meeting different cultures, different foods, all of that experience, which is great. I love this lyric because it's abstract in a sense,
Sure.
but I always felt this was a love song, but it isn't.
If in anything, it's a love song to the life of being a touring musician in some respects, or and then in parts. And like I said, it's a little schizophrenic. Like I do that lyrically because, well, frankly, it's just more fun.
Yeah, the ambiguity is great.
I always think about David Bowie, how he, like the stories of him was just like cutting up words and then throwing them up in the air or whatever, and then rearranging them. And that's what the lyrics are, and they don't make any sense, and that's okay because he's David Bowie. I'm like, well, why can't I at least just be like less story, less literal? Like, I want the phonetics to feel good and have an impact, but I also want the words just like sort of mean something in that moment, and not necessarily, I'm not trying to tell a larger story. Sometimes I'm just trying to convey a feeling, and I think this is both a song to me and to my band, and then back at just bands, like, just go for it, guys. There's something special about what we're doing as it relates to your whole life. And there's a colloquialism that it's better to ask forgiveness than to
Ask permission.
And that's kind of the dickish way of saying it. But like, really what I'm saying here is like, it's better to know than to wonder.
Yeah.
About your dreams. And so this is that.
Well, this chorus, much like the top of the song with the chorus progression, that tambourine's there with those 16th notes just makes it move. It just makes it feel faster than it is. From the chorus 1, we're immediately into verse 2.
You've got a way that distracts me from my everyday. Not much to say out of way, so let us through. We're not afraid of the humble things that you might say. You might be right, we might be wrong. Be strong, get ready to call.
This verse is interesting to me, Jamie, because if anything, you would think that you'd want to build a song in a sense where this would have been the first verse, because this is broke down with your strumming patterns. You got your eighth note guitars here for half of it, but it's interspersed. Yeah, it's interspersed with the strumming pattern of verse 1. It's really cool. If anything, again, when I was studying the song, I thought that it would be flipped, but I think it works great here. The lyric for verse 2 is, "You've got a way that distracts me from my everyday. Not much to say, on our way, so let us through. We're not afraid of the harmful things that you might say. You might be right, we might be wrong. Be strong, get ready to." And on strong, get ready to, the last line, the drums, bass, and the guitars, they ring out like verse 1 again. So again, you're basically just, I guess, expounding on verse 1 and what's going on here.
It's funny. I don't know if you're like this, but like, I kind of can't remember my lyrics unless I'm singing them.
And especially weird when you have someone reciting them back to you, not singing them to you. It's strange too.
Go ahead, grab your guitar. Let's hear it. Again, it's sort of like there's a restraint in the music that we apply that isn't in the first verse, right? The first verse is just, like I want to make sure that it's all exclamation points, right? Musically. Yeah. And here we're like, okay, we've done our chorus. Like, let's do the unexpected and pull back a little bit. Like you said, songs typically sort of build over time, and there's no one way to do anything, obviously. And if you want to, keep writing songs long enough, you want to eventually amuse yourself. So going the other direction and pulling back, I think is totally, something I employ actually kind of frequently. But yeah, the ideas that are in this verse to me are just kind of more the same. It's just a different way. Maybe a little bit more vulnerable sounding, I suppose. You've got a way that distracts me from my everyday. Again, that's to music. That's me telling music, I love music. I love you, music. This sounds a little remedial and a little childish in some respects, and I haven't thought about the song lyrically in.
I mean, you say it's remedial, but it's abstract enough to me to where it's not. I had no idea where you were going with this song. I've heard this song for over 20 years, and I'm learning about it through a fresh lens right now. It's really cool.
Well, it's funny because talking about it too almost sort of redefines it again for me. I don't have like a one-to-one look at this in any of my songs after they're recorded. Usually there's that 6-month period where you go back and put on your latest record and you go, okay, and it doesn't sound like your work anymore. It sounds like music that you could maybe listen to. And then that's my favorite time to listen to any of my music. And then I probably put it away for another year. You know what I mean? Because it's like, you're like, okay, by the time you get to the end of the record, you're like, okay, I remember working on this now. I got to put this away. So
I lived it.
Yeah, I lived it. I don't need to hear it. So, but yeah, a more vulnerable sort of take on verse 1, I suppose. And maybe that's why it sort of sinks and fits in with the restraint.
Well, I think it's awesome. Chorus 2 is a double chorus.
To call you, this is for you. I will see you forever. New Tokyo is calling you. Call you, this is for you. I will see you forever. New Tokyo is calling you.
At the very end of this chorus, you say "calling you" again with a different melody that leads us into the bridge, and this bridge is great.
We're not giving up, even after every casualties. Things are looking up, songs are catching like it's some disease. Your invention of some cruelty, oh please.
We're not giving up, even after heavy casualties. Things are looking up. And on these 3 lines, there's eighth note palm mute chugging that's happening on the guitars. The 4th line is songs are catching like it's some disease. The guitars go to like a big downstroke strumming pattern here. Last line, your invention of some cruelty. Oh, please. And there's a buildup on the drums, bass, and guitar there before what I'm calling a bust. And there's this little tambourine shake there before we get into to what I'm like, again, I'm calling a bust. I don't think I've ever referred to that on this show before, but this is the perfect definition of what I'm considering a bust. We'll get into that in a moment. There are harmonies on Things Are Looking Up and Your Invention of Some Cruelty, which I want to talk to you about. I know you love harmonies. You've always been about them. On this particular song, did you have harmonies, do you remember, in different places, or were they always where they were at?
I think they're always where they're at. I mean, I would say that when I'm writing a song, the vocals and the let's say the guitar part, right, kind of happen simultaneously. And at the same time, I'm probably coming up with lyrics. I'm probably also imagining where I would want to punctuate those lyrics with harmonies. So by the time I get to the recording phase, I kind of know what to do, or at least I have a target in mind. This verse lyrically is sort of about Rory. Now, we're not giving up even after heavy casualties. At this point in the band, Rory Phillips and I from The Impossible started the Stereo, and I had then since kicked him out. And we weren't getting along. We weren't musically we're collaborating as great, like as great as we ever were. And I never, ever once in all of my life since knowing him ever thought that he wasn't a fantastic songwriter, but in a band together at that time, at our level of youth and immaturity, we just were not making it happen. Again, probably a lot of what you heard of me being difficult to work with comes from this time period,
I got to tell you, you're kind of blowing my mind right now, because there was a moment last night, I'm listening to this song, like really hyper focusing in on it. And these 2 lines, we're not giving up even after heavy casualties. I thought it might be about perseverance of being in a band and pushing on, and knowing your history of being through band members by this point. That was the one thing I went, well, maybe this isn't a love song, but I kind of brushed it off. And now that you're saying it, it's awesome. It tripped me out.
Yeah. It is definitely, this section of the song is definitely this sort of the reflective, and you can kind of hear me cheer myself up in a little arc here that happens. We're not giving up even after heavy casualties. Things are looking up. Songs are catching like it's some disease, which is the arrogance of me, like on full display, right? Our shit doesn't stink. we're the jam, right? And then the denial, right? The arc is your invention of some cruelty. Please. Like, what? I haven't killed anybody. What are you talking about? I'm just writing rock and roll. That whole, and it's funny to me because like that in itself, the bridge to me is almost the whole story of the song, just in one section. And then the rest of it is just scenery surrounding it lyrically.
That's really interesting. Well, at the end here of the bridge, there's a buildup on the drums, bass, and guitar, as I had mentioned. And there's like this really quick tambourine shake that goes into,
I call that rattlesnake, by the way.
Rattlesnake. There you go. Yeah, that's the term. It's the rattle that happens, and it's what I refer to as a bust. It's an interlude. It's the part after the bridge before the last chorus. It's 8 measures. I also wrote in my notes, this is the arena rock part. Okay,
correct.
The guitars are panned. The stereo guitar is just off to the left, one guitar. And there's these backwards, like reverb. Were they backwards snare drums that are coming in there?
Yeah. So I'll go a little technical so people can understand. So what you do is, if you've ever heard music where you hear like a swooping up, swishing sound into a drum hit, like, right? Before the invention of Pro Tools and flipping things around, easy as pie, what you would have to do is you actually flip the reels of your tape upside down. Like you basically turn your tape upside down on the tape machine. And so now as it plays, it's actually playing the opposite direction, right? So it's playing the song from the end of the song to the beginning of the song. And then if you apply effects to that, it actually, and record them onto the tape and then flip the tape around again, now it will play the effects that you just recorded backwards into the sounds that were creating those reverb sounds. We call it preverb.
And now with technology, we can push a button and do that.
It can take seconds to do it now. It was before. It's like there was a lot of, okay, get out your notepad, or here's where it starts, here's where it ends, and you would never know how good it sounded or didn't sound until you sort of like did the whole process and then listen back to it and like, okay, I don't like that reverb. Then you have to start it again. And it required, if your song was in the middle of the reels, you have to rewind the whole damn thing, flip it over. And it was a huge deal. So I don't know how long it took us, but it was like one of those classic, like, we want the Bon Jovi drum hits here, man. Come on.
That's exactly what it is. It's
Shot
the arena.
Yeah,
it's the arena 80s rock part, and it's awesome. And those backward snares are coming before each drum hits, and there's a floor tom and rack tom, and then you have intermittent kick drums that are happening for the first 4 measures. On the back half, the back 4 measures, the bass comes in, the other stereo guitar is panned off right, so now you got full stereo guitars, comes in on the last 4 measures, and at the last measure, the band rings out. There's like this buried guitar solo run that happens there real quick.
There is.
It's almost, it's like this guitar lead.
Doesn't it go dan ticka tan ticka tan ticka tan? Isn't that part in there? This little funk guitar.
Maybe.
If you're saying there's a guitar solo in there, we really gave the kitchen sink to this part of the song, because we've got like the preverb Bon Jovi, we got the riff rock, we got the bass drops, we got the kick hits. We got funk guitar. Now we got a guitar solo. What's left, right? Like,
I'm hearing like a half measure guitar run there, panned off to the right. And then, Jamie, I'm perplexed by this. Do you say, and this is kind of buried, do you say, it almost sounds like my head or my hand before you go into chorus?
My head. My head. Yeah,
okay.
Okay. Like, my head gets inside of you. Like, and one version of me says, my head gets inside of you, and the other one just holds it out, my head. Fun fact, and maybe this is debunking some stereo lore, I do not say butthead. I've had a lot of fans over the years go, why do you say butthead in the middle of New Tokyo? I'm like, I don't. I'm sorry. I don't say butthead.
I didn't see that when I was Googling the lyrics, nor did I see any lyric here. And I'm like, what is he saying there? It sounded like my head, and I said my hand maybe, but it was my head. Okay.
Yeah, but I do want everybody to know is now I do say butthead. Like live, I say butthead. Yeah.
Well, we get into chorus 3. Chorus 3 is another double chorus here. The harmonies are in the same spots. You got that 16th note tambo that's going through here. When you get to the second half, the band stops on I Will See You. It's just you alone there. The band is back in on From a New View. And then on that line as well, you get a little falsetto there on that I Will See You line. That was always kind of one of your signature things.
I will see you from a new.
I could never do the falsetto thing. I tried. If either you can do it or you can't, and I can't do it, or even make it pull it off at all. But it's great there. Love the dynamics. Then New Tokyo is calling you on the last Tokyo there. It's a different melody that you go to. It's so good and refreshing there to lift on that melody. And you get the calling you. In the very last one, you say, ooh, ooh, ooh. And there's another harmony that comes in there that's panned off left that's pretty loud. I love how that comes in there, and the song's just still lifting. And then you get the band at the end, the jing, 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 jing. You end on that big C note. The tambourine is ringing out. The rattlesnake's happening there. And do I hear organ pads here on the fade out?
I don't think so.
No, Maybe it's some stereo on a guitar or chorus on a guitar, excuse me, or something that I'm hearing.
In my recollection, I don't think there would have been any keyboards on this song. There's definitely keyboards on the record in different places, but I don't think there's any keyboards on this song. In fact, I think it's just the end of the song would likely have been a total of 3 guitars, 2 rhythm guitars, hard panned, just kind of playing through the chord wash, and then there was a little chimey ding, 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 sort of police siren guitar that's happened.
Maybe I'm hearing some delay from that or something on the mix.
Yeah, at the final kind of crash chords, the beat is C sharp. There's a response that the chimey guitar does that goes down. So the band goes da 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 da, lifts up, but then the now 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 happens after it. Talking about this many years later sounds really intellectual and smart. Like, oh, there's a dichotomy of up and down, but I think it just sounded cool.
And it did, man. And I got to be honest, it had been a minute since I put this song on, and I've just been immersed in it the past few days. And I said it at the top, perfect little pop gem here. I always loved this song, but it's been a real joy to go back and revisit it and fall in love with it again.
Thank you.
Jamie, for the listeners, has been doing, probably for the last 15 or more years, you've been fully immersed in producing, recording, engineering, and mixing. You produced most of the Punchline album. Our producer, Chris, Punchline, Just Say Yes in 2008, and you did the whole Punchline album, Delightfully Pleased, in 2010. And February of 2022, you guys launched a Kickstarter to fund a new record entitled 13 with an accompanying podcast series. So tell us a little bit about that before we go.
Okay, yeah. So we actually, the record is all done. We didn't necessarily fund the record. We wanted to just do kind of like, this is a different day and age for us, and you and I are creatures of the old model where you get signed to a label and do this, that, and the other, and get on the road and sell your wares and all that good stuff, right? Things are a lot different now, and then add a pandemic on top of it, and it's just completely bizarre how any of us are trying to figure out how to use music as a utility for your life's work, right? So we kind of, we got this record done, and we sat around. It kind of felt like we sat around for about 2 years going, what are we going to do about this? Like, we have this thing, and we talked to different people, approached labels big and small, and nothing ever felt like it was just going to work, or there wasn't enough interest, or we weren't interested, or whatever, right? Some form of not going to happen happened. And so we were left with, well, I guess let's just try to put this out on our own. But we're like, well, what if we did like a Kickstarter just to kind of cover the cost of vinyl, and then that way we could also kind of gauge what kind of interest people had in it. And so we launched this with this really small goal in the beginning, just to kind of cover the pressing costs, and we funded in 20 minutes, and we were just like, oh, okay. And like by the end of the day, we had doubled it, and we're like, okay, this is okay. So we're like scrambling. We're like, okay, now we obviously have to come up with like more sort of like stretch goals to make this work. And so so far, what started out as like a sort of like a let's do like 5K thing. We're now like we're about to cross $32,000, and our fans are just going crazy for it, and we're going crazy for them, and we're so excited. And now we're going to do this like hi-fi sort of 4K studio concert film. And we're sort of aiming towards, getting like one more stretch goal so we can get like a proper music video made, like a really good one. And we've upgraded everybody to like deluxe gatefold vinyl and, like white vinyl or clear vinyl. We're kind of still arguing what we're going to do, but we're trying to get everything terrific for our fans. And
I got to jump in and say congratulations.
Thank you.
Kind of going back to what you talked about earlier. I mean, what vindication, and
Sure.
You started this band, you took a lot of time off. Yeah, you did the odd reunion show here or there, but your fans remembered you in a big way, man. That's awesome.
Trust me, it's pretty great being us right now. We're very happy, and we're so thankful, and it's hard to even like really describe the feeling. It's just like, it's overwhelming. It's and emotional, to be honest. It's like, gosh, thank you so much. But ultimately what we're trying to do though is just share some more music with everybody. And then Rory, during the course of all of this, Rory's has, when we reunited in 2011 for the Fubai Ramen 15-year anniversary shows in New York, it's funny because the band has sort of been together in this form now, like twice as long as it was when we were actually around. You know what I mean? With no lineup changes, only about like 6 shows too. It's the slowest tour ever, but like, it's funny. But anyway, so part of Rory's story is that, he was there in the beginning of the band and now he's back. Right. But there's this huge window in the middle where he doesn't really know what's happened. And like you sort of alluded to, there was these rumors about what it was like to work with me, or the Stereo kind of started to have a almost Spinal Tap-esque revolving guitar player problem. Like every tour there's some guy, right? And on guitar, guy this time. You know what I mean? Like our band isn't Motley Crue. We don't have that story to tell. We're just kind of normal guys, but we do have a story to tell that's probably even more relatable than any band stories you've heard, because we kind of got to a point where we had an impact and we had opportunities. Most bands don't get to go on tour. Certainly most bands don't get to go on tour overseas and 14 countries and all the cool adventures that we got to do. But then a lot of bands that do get to that level have just these crazy stories of drama, self-imposed drama in our case, right? And like bad luck and this, that, and the other. And we kind of thought Rory's angle was like, I want to find out what happened to my band when I wasn't in it through this podcast and tell the story of what happened. And then also have like the sort of the reconciliation between me and Rory, but have it happen in the podcast, which it does. Like
that's awesome.
We saved it. We didn't, we had buried the hatchet a long time ago, but we didn't really go into the details. We just kind of like, the arm punch and the buddy hug and we're good, kind of thing. But for the podcast, we open the wound deep and it gets pretty intense. And we talk about all the things that happened, all the things that went wrong. And, like you said earlier, Stereo had this sort of outsized influence on maybe its peers or the bands that came after. But why didn't the Stereo was 5 years ahead, is I think what you said, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of examines like what happened. Why did this band, who seemed to have all the pieces in place for superstardom, why did it, whatever.
Yeah. And I think that more bands can relate to that, because there's been, how many great bands have you known that just for whatever reason, it's just this combination of, you said, talent, effort, luck, and just the cosmos. It's just all at once, and you could never really gauge that. And I think that's awesome. I'm looking forward to checking that out. And before we go, I got to ask you, who's more difficult to work with in 2022, Jamie Woolford or Rory Phillips?
Still Jamie Woolford. I hope I am the I wear the crown,
There's lots more Chris DeMakes a podcast after a few words from our sponsors.
What's up, everybody? I am Finn McKenty, host of the Punk Rock NBA podcast, part of the Sound Talent Media podcast network. My podcast is all about doing what you love for a living, and every week I sit down and talk to people who have done exactly that. For example, musicians like Tommy from Between the Buried and Me, Matt from Periphery, Lil Lotus and Shinigami, among many others, photographers, artists, designers, YouTubers like Glenn Fricker and Sarah Dici, and I unpack exactly how they got to where they are today with the goal of helping you do the same. So if that sounds cool, you can listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com, and I'll see you there.
Do you enjoy the content and production of Chris DeMakes a podcast? Do you have an idea for a podcast or an existing podcast that you'd like to take to the next level? Well, check out WeKnowPodcasting.com. At WeKnowPodcasting.com, we have over 25 years of combined experience in the pod field, and we're ready to help you succeed in the golden era of podcasting.
As we near the end of the show, here's a band you might not know.
Welcome to this week's Band You Might Not Know. If you'd like your band to be considered for Chris DeMakes a podcast, all you have to do is email your song via MP3 only and bio to bandyoumightnotknow@gmail.com. This week's featured artist is Demera, a band out of Rockford, Illinois. Demera is the brainchild of Billy Culpa, who plays drums, bass, and sings lead vocals, and Kevin Mitchell, who plays guitar and does backing vocals. Here's a snippet of their song, The Adults in the Room.
Supposed to do. Now it's clear, look around, that our ship is going
The Wrap with Chris and Chris.
Well, I really enjoyed that episode. Jamie is an old friend, and I love hearing him talk about music. I've loved this song for a long time. When we were deciding on the song, I personally strongly pushed for this one.
Yeah, there was a number of songs that I could have seen doing, but as I said to Jamie, I think this is a perfect little pop tune, and I think it was a great choice for this episode.
The Stereo has a lot of those perfect pop songs. In preparation for this episode, I put on just on random The Stereo, and it's just like so many songs. Even their last Fueled by Ramen album, Rewind and Record. I don't know if you're familiar with that album, Chris, but it's just like jam after jam after jam.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think they were 5 years ahead of their time, and it was a shame they broke up so early on that initial run. I really thought that great things were ahead for them, but as Jamie said, you know, he knows he's a perfectionist. It's hard to keep a band together no matter who you are, and they went through those trials and tribulations, but they're back now.
Yeah, never too late, man. The whole new Stereo album comes out next month in May, and yeah, so they just took a hiatus, and maybe now is their time. You never know. You know, there were a lot of things about this episode, Chris, that I thought were pretty funny and or crazy. The first one being Jamie talking about going from one tape machine to another. When he was talking about that, and I know you were thinking the same thing, I'm like, damn, wouldn't it have just been easier for you to just re-record these vocals rather than do this?
I know, and I think that it's such a killer vocal take, and I think that's what he was afraid of not being able to replicate, because he spent the better part of a full day on trying to transfer all these vocals when he could have sang it in an hour, but he felt there was some magic there, and I tend to agree with him.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about that on past episodes before, about not being able to necessarily replicate the magic you had the one time. So Jamie did what he had to make it happen again for the full length.
Yeah, and what he did would now take about 30 minutes with Pro Tools.
Right.
It's just what he was talking about doing was a Frankenstein mashup of epic proportions.
He talked about how they started playing New Tokyo before they even had lyrics for it. You could do that back in the day because you kind of heard, I know what he's talking about. It shows whether it's, a club with not the greatest sound system or some, hole in the wall VFW or whatever. People don't they'll hear the like phonetics of it, but not necessarily be able to decipher the lyrics. Have you ever done that, Chris? Have you ever played a song before you had lyrics?
So many times. I mean, Less Than Jake did it pre-Hello Rockview. The first song on the record is called Last One Out of Liberty City. The working title was Bulletproof. I made up the vocals, just nonsensical. We played it it was a skate and surf shop in Sarasota, Florida, I think in April of 98. The record didn't come out till that fall. We were also playing Big Crash back then with a different arrangement from the same record. So yeah, but again, I mentioned in the episode, you could get away with it. It wasn't on YouTube 4 hours later.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
That was a big part of it.
For sure. I liked Jamie talking about his songwriting process. I feel like it's similar to mine, and I'm sure yours too. I think most songwriters, once again, just kind of humming something, maybe a few words pop into your head while you're humming something, and then you go from there. And I found it really interesting that he said that this song was basically a pep talk to himself. I never took that away, but now that he says that, it's like, oh yeah, every line about this makes sense in that context.
No, it's pretty amazing, and it's also interesting. When I was studying for the song and going through it, I even mentioned the bridge. When I got to the lyrics, "We're not giving up even after heavy casualties," I thought for a second, maybe this isn't a love song or something. Maybe this is kind of, speaking inward about themselves, and I was right.
Right. I mean, I think I always listened to this song without really analyzing what the words meant, and it's just kind of what Jamie more or less said was the song and the melodies convey a feeling. And I liked that feeling, even though I didn't know specifically what the song was about.
Yeah, I had mentioned to him, I love the ambiguity of that lyric. New Tokyo is calling you. What does that mean?
Right.
And I've always loved lyrics like that, because what does it mean? It means whatever it means to you, and the next person it means something else, and the next person it means something else, and that's why music's so subjective and special.
I really like that he talked about how important travel is and how it changes your worldview. That is the most valuable thing that I've gained from touring, is just, like he said, being in other cultures, meeting people from other places, and just it expands your world so much and makes you, I don't know, empathetic to a lot of things. I think that not traveling, you tend to like view other people as so much different, or you don't care. But I feel like traveling's so important. I'm sure you've taken a lot of valuable lessons away from traveling.
Oh, well, yeah. I think that was so awesome that he touched on that. It's something I don't think we really talked about on the show. And it's so true. Those just learning and being inspired to write songs while being in another country. I can't tell you how many times that's happened. I'm in a hotel room in Tokyo. It's like, oh, this is so cool. I'm looking out. Look at this scenery. Look at this view. And you're experiencing things that you never would have experienced if you had stayed put where you always are, where you always live.
I also related to when he said that feeling of when you get to travel out of the country for the first time, and that thought that, I mean, I've had the same exact thought that he said, I can't believe my songs are giving me a free vacation with my friends. You know, like that's amazing. That's amazing. We've got to go to Japan and, you know, Europe and even Canada, you know, even traveling to other countries and getting to play music. That's amazing. You wrote a song and then it took you to these places all over the world.
Right. And, you know, they, with the new album, they have an accompanying podcast series that kind of details where the band's been and where they're going. And, you know, basically, you know, talks about, there's people in there that, you know, bands, Fall Out Boy, a bunch of different bands that talk about being influenced by the Stereo. And I can't tell you how many bands, you know, that came after them had that sound, what they were doing. I, again, feel they were so far ahead of their time.
Well, you know, I was right there in the thick of it in the Stereo, Fall Out Boy, or whatever. I mean, it's pretty obvious that the vocal stylings of Patrick Stump were inspired by Jamie Woolford. Like, they had a very, very similar styles of singing, both great singers, you know, but I feel like both guys not afraid to, I don't know, bring that soul out in their voice. Is that the right word I'm looking for? Just something, you know, there's a lot of really high-pitched singers or like punk sounding singers in the world of like our style of music, and these guys had those like pretty, dare I say, Motown-y type of vocal stylings.
Oh yeah, there was definitely some soul in there for sure. And man, we touched on Animal Chin at the top of the episode, his first band, and Jamie even made mention of it. You want to talk about singing up there? He was singing so high in those days, and he started to rein it in with the Stereo a bit as the years have went by. But great episode, great band, and it was really great to catch up with an old friend.
Yeah, and I can't wait to listen to that Stereo podcast. You know what I'm going to give that podcast, Chris, once I listen to it?
What are you going to give it? I have a feeling, I think I may know, Chris. Are you going to give it a rating and a review?
I am going to go straight to Apple Podcasts, give it 5 stars and a review. I'm already assuming I'm giving it 5 stars, even though I haven't heard it yet. At the time of this recording, I'm sure by the time people are listening to this, I've already listened to all of it. But at the time of recording this, they've only released 1 episode, and I'm going to listen to it on the treadmill tomorrow. And I will be giving it 5 stars, unless I think it's bad. I doubt I'm going to think that.
That is awesome. Well, hey, if you haven't already, join the Chris DeMakes a Podcast Facebook group. It is a lot of fun. It's awesome. And yes, I'm still writing custom songs. I'd love to write a custom song for you, that special someone, a coworker, a friend, a foe. Hit me up, chrisdemakes@gmail.com. I also do jingles for businesses and podcasts. And I want to thank this week's guest, Mr. Jamie Woolford from the Stereo. And we'll see you next week.
Mad Magazine.
Advertising mascots.
B-movie posters.
And cartoons.
Oh yeah, can't forget cartoons.
If you get the funky connection that ties these pop culture gems together, you'll dig Two Designers Walk Into a Bar.
See, we're a couple of creatively curious pals living between the bookends of grand museums and dive bars.
Hey, you know the place, the sweet spot where highbrow and lowbrow become drinking buddies.
So join our barroom chats as we talk influential work and uncover stories of how the familiar became iconic. Think behind the music for the stuff we love.
Check out our website at twodesignerswalkintoabar.com.
And listen wherever you get your podcasts or visit evergreenpodcasts.com.
Hey there, I am Johnny Christ from Avenged Sevenfold, and I've got a podcast called Drinks with Johnny you're going to want to check out. I sit down with a bunch of different people from all different walks of life, from professional wrestlers to actors, comedians, fighters, musicians, everything in between. I'm just looking to make some friends and have a good time doing it. So if that sounds like something you're into, go check out Drinks with Johnny, streaming everywhere now.